Complex on the healthcare in between. Physics, art, and math got us down this path. Historical tales come alive, where science and stories dive. Blended facts with heart, knowledge from the start. Need bridge blues we sing to the future memory. Health and science in the mix. Midbridge got the fix. Complex subjects made clear. Every episode cheer. Ramona leads the way, explaining day by day. In the world of digital streams, turning knowledge into dreams. Through the tales of old, new stories unfold.
MedBix Webcast is a new kind of healthcare media channel to break the silo mentality and foster interdisciplinary thinking. Our mission is to fill that gap and to create a curiosity through different lenses, tapping the passion that guided the historical figures in medicine and bringing present-day groundbreaking research to the front lines. We interview physicians and leaders in the industry about present-day healthcare challenges on our live programming. Welcome to the MedBix Webcast. This is Ramanandam Raju. I'm the host. I'm certainly, this is a very interesting, I like a polymath kind of a doctor's polymath kind of background, a multi-interdisciplinary background. I love it. This is the guest is that kind of a, the guest is coming up is that kind of a polymath background, So you don't expect, I have a physics degree and master's in physics that I did. I never thought that I ventured into the healthcare, but I immersed the last 3 decades in healthcare. I did everything. I used to own an imaging center. I ran a HMO, IPA. I did everything in the healthcare system, sell medical devices, place doctors. So across the country, I did quite a bit. But, one of the things I came across, because I used to sell a lot of devices, one of the metrics that doctors, health metrics is, for insurance company purposes, for anybody who wants to get a life insurance or a wellness program to enroll into the wellness program or the health insurance even, they used to discriminate people based on the BMI, body mass index. This is one of the famous laws in physics is a square law. Square law is weight divided by height square. Is a square is always come across in physics all the time, So that ratio is a deciding what is the health metrics is, the health risk is, or obesity classification in the healthcare. But that's deeply flawed, So I was going through an article by Dr. Eric Topol. Eric Topol is one of the celebrated cardiologists. He's on my LinkedIn connection. And then I saw his article about the B.R.I, Body Roundness Index. I was intrigued, and then I mentioned Dr. Diana, PhD doctor she is. Dr. Diana Thomas is a PhD from Georgia Tech. She says that is from my hometown, actually. So she did a PhD in mathematics, and she ventured into this AI, the side of the new metrics she introduced to the healthcare system. Well, let me introduce her. She is a military U.S. West Point. She's a professor of mathematics in West Point Military Academy, U.S. Military Academy. Okay, so she is coming from a excellent background. The impeccable credentials. And let me bring her. She's also for a Indian. Let me bring her to the table. Hey, welcome, Diana. Welcome to
Hi,
the
how are you?
podcast. Welcome here. Can you give us some the background of yours? I gave you a little bit background, but you can give a little bit more background of your personal, professional background a little bit.
Okay. So my parents are from India. They're from Kerala. And my dad and mom came to the United States in the early 70s, and they had me already. I was born in Germany, and we moved to the DC area. And then from there, after my dad finished his residency, we moved to Montana. So I grew up in Montana. My hometown is Glendive, Montana, on the eastern side of Montana, not the mountain side. And I went to college at the University of Montana in mathematics. And then I went to graduate school in mathematics for my PhD at Georgia Tech. After I finished Georgia Tech, I was at the United States Military Academy on a postdoc for 2 years, working with the Army Research Labs and teaching at West Point. And then after that, I was in the Jersey public state system for a while. I met my husband, we had children, and I wanted to stay in this area. And I taught at Montclair State for 17 years. And then I got a call from my former department head and he was asking if I'd like to come back as a visiting professor for a year. And I came back in 2016 to West Point. And after I was there for 2 weeks, I think this is where I want to retire from. This is like a wonderful place to be in. So I'm back where I started, back at West Point.
It is very unusual for Indian girl to be in the military side, and the father is a doctor, and you're diverted completely, entirely different route he took.
Yeah, the military side was really Chris Arney was he was the colonel, head of department at the time, and it was around the time where civilians were first coming to West Point as professors. It was largely all the instructors were military, and so Congress mandated by the year 2000 that 25% be civilian. And so the math department, headed by Chris Arney and Frank Giordano, actually, he recently passed away, but Frank Giordano, they had thought about how to bring in civilians in the math department in a way that made sense. And so they thought postdocs. And they had some senior positions that helps these new postdocs find jobs. So our jobs are temporary. So they set it all up. So it's the long gray line for civilians. I'm coming around the other end. So we just had a meeting today talking about a fellowship. That fellowship, I was in the first group of that fellowship. So it was interesting because we were talking about the history of that fellowship. Like I was the first group of that fellowship.
Interesting. Yeah.
Well, mhm.
Very interesting. Yeah, was a unique background. There's like a polymath background. On the top of it, you ventured into healthcare. The fathers. You may not. I'm very actively involved in all the ethnic organizations. Dr. Enos was running Kerala Medical Association at the time.
Yep.
I know him very well. He did some research on the South Asian heart, and I invited him around the conferences. We did the Association of Black Cardiologists and Association of Indian Cardiologists. We had a conference together. I put together. In that conference, he was talking about liver mass, and we didn't know exactly the Asians, particularly Asians, the risk factors are. Everybody's talking about different things, and now he came up with a very unique background, unique perspective on the health metrics. Tell us a little bit about that, and how did you just explain a little bit about the BMI, then explain the B.R.I. next.
Sure. So there's two ways you could look at BMI. One way was the way you talked about earlier. It's really a normalization of weight to height. So if I tell you that there's a 100-kilogram man in my office, then you have a picture in your head of who that is. But if I tell you that he is 180 centimeters tall, then you have a different picture because that's a very tall guy. So we have to normalize weight for height. And so it turns out if you statistically look at this, like you can actually show that this 2 is the most optimal squaring, dividing by height squared, not necessarily height, but height squared, gives you the right, correct normalization. So you can show this with data, but you can also think about it mathematically as a geometric principle. And the way you do that is you look at the volume of a cylinder and make some geometrical arguments to show that the volume of the cylinder, if you use weight as a proxy, that you get something like weight is proportional to height squared. It'll come up with something like that. And so really the underpinning of BMI is assuming that the human body is in the shape of a cylinder.
Yeah. I'm doing a little bit of presenting a little bit of there. So,
Yeah.
you can see that I took some of your. So BMI was the gold standard for a long time, right? Even though the people don't tell us, but they took doctors. It's not only it's a flawed in the ethnically and the race, gender, all those things affect the BMI. They didn't take consideration. The most important one is fat distribution, right? That adiposity that you're talking about. So let us talk about that one a little bit. This lady, this is a that Dr. Eric Topol was mentioning about it. I don't know whether you got that or she that this woman is that she is a rugby player, and then in the article it says that she is obese. She is one of the well built, with the muscle mass, a lean mass she has, and then BMI went it wrong. She was classified as obese. Tell us a little bit about that. Why it was not fit into that situation there.
So I actually have a little I think during COVID I made a little video clip and I posted on Twitter and it has quite a bit of views. I can put it into the chat if you want. But
Yeah.
it was this thing about body mass index. People complain about body mass index, but body mass index is only weight normalized for height. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And what people are really complaining about is the classifications. So if I take people's body mass index and I bucket them, all of you below 25 are normal weight. All of you between 25 and 30 are overweight. All of you between 30 and 35 have class 1 obesity. We're bucketing people. Those buckets are typically made from looking at outcomes. And so, for example, you could say, I'm going to look at percent fat. And I'm going to chop up percent fat into percentiles and look at 95th percentile and above and just say that's excess fat. And then we can look at the BMI. Where should I make that cut line so that those people with excess fat we're using BMI as a proxy for fat in that case, so that we're bucketing them. When you bucket people like that, though, there's variation at the bucket points. Someone could have a higher BMI and be misclassified as having excess fat, like your rugby player. Or you could also have someone on the other end that may be unhealthy, but you've misclassified them as being healthy. And so it's at these border lines, at these cut points where you make this error. And so it's not really BMI people have a problem with, it's the cut points people have a problem with. And those cut points vary. There's actually the World Health Organizations talk about cut points for BMI for people of Asian descent. And so like that's the racial part of it. And then also, it's the cut points. So that it's not BMI, it's the cut points. And it doesn't give you body mass distribution, which means that you could actually have excess fat and be classified as normal weight. It could go the other way around. Rugby players healthy, misclassified as being unhealthy. There could be someone unhealthy, misclassified as being healthy.
That's a big, huge problem, actually. One of the things that one of the things I want to talk about that is not only misclassification, that how did you actually got into this B.R.I? You wanted the new metric that you wanted to introduce. What did you get into that? How did you get that interest?
Well, I gained a lot of weight. So West Point was big on this. Like I was very physical at West Point. I
I
was
can't
very
imagine
physical at
you're
Georgia
overweight.
Tech. And when I left West Point after my postdoc, I got married. We're vegetarian. My family's vegetarian, and so I was not vegetarian growing up. And so I had a diet change, and I became sedentary because you can't. Married people don't go around playing hours and hours of basketball. So I gained a lot of weight. And as I was starting to lose the weight, I started thinking about what's happening, what's the thermodynamics of weight loss. And I was working with people at Pennington Biomedical, and one of them was Steve Heimsfield. Steve Heimsfield is one of the leaders in body composition. And I had seen something he had done with geometry of the human body and looking at body mass index, this idea that we're a cylinder. In fact, I think he has a picture on the cover of National Geographic where it has the human body inside a cylinder. It's a very interesting picture. But then I looked in the mirror and said, I'm not like that. Women have more of like a curve. And so I told him, we have other measurements, not just weight and height. We have waist circumference in these big databases. So why don't we use waist circumference and model the human body with some other volume instead of a cylinder? So the volume that I chose was ellipsoid, because an ellipsoid will capture some of that curviness of the body that the body mass index wouldn't.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. You know that BRI, that's a body roundness index. You use a lot of mathematical techniques. You said that. Well, first of all, before I go into mathematics, what kind of equipment you validated your research on the body roundness of the body? Just to talk about mathematics also. What is the mathematics description of roundness? You said
Okay.
the eccentricity. Let us talk about that mathematics a little bit.
So one of the things about mathematicians is we all teach, and we all teach all kinds of classes. So we are kind of on at least the undergraduate level, we're pretty, all mathematicians should be ready to teach any one of those courses. And one of the courses we don't maybe like to teach that much is the pre-calculus courses. I think in India, you would take that in pre-degree, before college. But sometimes, at the college level, we have students here that take it, and we learn about ellipses. And ellipses have, they have these standard forms. You have circles, ellipses, hyperbolas. It's this section of mathematics. And in there, when we study ellipses, we study how round that ellipse is. So ellipse, you can kind of think of as being a deformed circle. So if you think of so here's my circle is like this, and then an ellipse would be like this. And so I can think of the circle being deformed into an oval shape. And so I could have an ellipse that's closer to being a circle than it is to being a line. So a perfectly straight ellipse would be a line, and then you could see it kind of gravitating and being deformed to a circle. Area called topology, by the way. If you want to have a measurement about how close this ellipse is to being a circle, that's called eccentricity. And we teach that in a pre-calculus course, and everybody forgets it. But because I'm a mathematician and I teach it, I always remember it. And so the eccentricity is really the body roundness index. The bad thing is, though, that eccentricity is a number between 0 and 1. And most human bodies are not close to being a circle. They're actually closer to being a line. So the numbers for eccentricity range from like 0.8 to close to 1. And so what you can do is take those numbers and map them to something more like integers. Like the body roundness index maps it to something that's more pleasant to look at.
Okay. So it's actually
and you want it in the right direction, right? Yeah. The closer you are to 0 for eccentricity, the closer you are to circle. But for a human, you'd probably want to know those numbers to be, the larger those numbers are, the worse my body is. You want that direction. So you have to invert the mapping. So it's a function that takes eccentricity and maps it to the body roundness index.
So body roundness, that's what you said, that you use the calculus, that's a differential calculus. I remember
pre-calculus, not even calculus, pre-calculus.
Pre-calculus, yeah. So let me, that you came up with this body round index is kind of a new kind of metric you came out. How did you validate the research of that? What kind of a medical equipment, medical device? I heard that you use a DEXA scan, right?
That's right. So
yeah, tell us a little bit about what equipment you used it.
So body mass index, you could look at those cut points, like cut points for excess fat. And so that's largely where we went to. So body roundness index, you want to check it for ranges of percent body fat. And we also wanted to know how well body roundness index also predicts belly fat. It's called visceral adipose tissue, because the fat that lies over your belly, it's correlated to having poor cardiovascular outcomes, vascular health outcomes, and also poor metabolic health. And so if we can predict how much from BRI that you have over your belly, then that would be a good metric, right? And so we took body mass index, body roundness index, we added in other easy to measure age, gender, so add in some covariates, and we looked at how well it predicts percent body fat and visceral adipose tissue. And the visceral adipose tissue you measure with MRI. So we had beautiful MRI data from 2 sites. One was from St. Luke's, Columbia, the New York Obesity Research Center. The lead of that study was Dipna Gallagher. And we also had data from Manfred Mueller and Anja Bosi-Westphal from Kiel University in Germany. I mean, getting a whole body MRI, that's, if you've ever had an MRI, you don't usually get the whole body. You usually have something wrong and you have to, like, you hurt your foot and you have your foot MRI'd, right? You don't do the whole body. So these 2 sites, the one at Columbia and the one at Kiel, they specialize in just studying body composition. So they use MRIs to measure everything,
I
all
was
the fat depots.
I was
So
wondering
that's
about that. So you validated through DEXA scan and the body composition through MRI. That's what you're
yes.
saying, right?
Yeah.
So you use a very advanced kind of thing to validate this. You don't need to B.R.I. body roundness index you want to measure. You don't need that equipment at this time. You just basically you can measure.
Measuring tape.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah, so that's the whole idea. Like, not everybody has an MRI. You don't have an MRI. It's in the background over there. I don't see an MRI. People don't have it. It's expensive. And even if you had to get it at a clinic, it's not like you go there unless you're sick. And so that's why we want these indices, is because we don't have a way to measure these other things that are correlated to health outcomes.
Body roundness index, one of the metric that I was impressed is that it can tell clearly 50% more health risk for cancer, for heart disease, is clearly giving a much more precise outcomes on the health risk side. Is that true, or is it I guess?
I don't know about 50% more. Like, you have to compare it to something, maybe
Yeah.
body mass index. But I would say, like, what it is really at the end of the day, the body roundness index is your waist normalized for height. That's what it is, using geometry.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can always use statistics and put, like, I'm going to take waist circumference and divide it by height. You can do whatever formula you want, but this is a formula that's grounded in geometry.
Can they use the DEXA scan right now? A lot of doctors have a DEXA scans in their offices sometimes. So can they use the DEXA scan and do the multiplication? Do you get some better results, or use the calculator that you're mentioning? I put on my website actually calculator, that B.R.I. calculator on my website medbricks.com. If you go there, you can measure. You can go to your website. Actually, the one you gave me a link, I put on my website medbricks.com. You can go there and see it. So
That's not my calculator, but this is a company. I can give you the names of the people that contacted me, but they asked me if they can have my code, and I gave them my code, and they redid the calculator. The original calculator that we built that was on Pennington's website. It was developed by one of my friends who is a computer science PhD, and upstairs from me at Montclair State, and he wrote the code. I don't have that anymore because I moved universities and changed the computer, and unfortunately Carl Bredlaw passed away, and so that original calculator is not there, but this group built the same calculator, exactly the same. And it actually means a lot to me that they made exactly the same calculator, because when in mathematics, when you work closely with people, you become very closely connected. And so to see it, it's like seeing Carl Bredlaw alive again, to see that calculator reinvented. FCE, I think, is the company name. Look.
You send me that.
Yeah. So they rebuilt the calculator.
Visceral adipose, that fat distribution in the stomach, abdominal area, is the key factor. That is the health risk factor according to the body roundness index, right? That's what.
Correct.
Yeah. So that let us go into the little bit of various doctors are all. This is a very new thing, a new metric. That is, did you contact any insurance companies about this, or did you get involved with any business side of the B.R.I? The New York Times said that you're this brainchild of yours, B.R.I.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I worked a lot with also Courtney Peterson. She's a co-author on the paper. She's a physicist by training. And she's now at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. And her and I would talk about these ideas and scaling for height, scaling, normalizing, what's the best way to normalize. So yeah, I remember like those times just talking and having time to think about these things.
Let us talk about the other extreme. They said that if it is a B.R.I. is a lot less. So, for example, I grew up in India. That that I know Gujaratis are very small, but they have highest risk factors. From Gujarat, in the state of Gujarat in India, they have highest risk factors. Still, they're small and thin. What you're saying is even underweight B.R.I. could is a healthy. It is also a high risk factor. That's what he said. Can you explain
That's
that a little
correct.
bit?
That's true for BMI as well. So
Okay.
you have the U-shaped curves for mortality for BMI as well. So if your BMI is very low, you're also higher at risk from, your mortality risk goes up.
Okay. So
So
it is. So yeah, let us talk about a little bit about deviate from the BR. I see. Let me bring some little bit about it, and then you can let me bring the what I did on the presentation a little bit. I put your presentation basically. Okay, that just let me put your. So anything you want to talk about that little bit in that that lady that was wrongly calculated BRI formula is wrong. So this is the one you illustrated that all they're all very different body structure, but they have same BMI. That
right,
is a problem. He says that right. That is a classic problem. The
right.
pear shaped is the one, the dangerous one. That is the causes the that is caused the BRI body roundness index is a pear shaped is the one causes a more problematic, right? That's what you're
Mhm.
saying.
Well, in this figure, yes. So we wanted to show three people. I see one of my friends on here. Hi, Carmen. We wanted to see like three people that have the same BMI. So Courtney Peterson and I put this figure together, and we wanted to show illustrate how you can have different body roundness indices for people who have the same body mass index. But like I said, you could have someone. So I'll give you an example. I have more than one brother-in-law. So if they hear me talking about this, they don't know which one I'm talking about. But one of my brother-in-laws, he did this. He put his numbers into the calculator. His body mass index was normal, but his body roundness index was out of the zone.
So
So that he was classified as being healthy by body mass index, but classified as being unhealthy body roundness index. And so I think the rugby player is
he's
the
the
other
best
way
example.
around,
Yeah.
right? It's the other way
Yeah.
around. She's
Yeah.
classified as being unhealthy when she's healthy.
Oh my God, yeah, that is really striking. That is one of the things is that I was so impressed with this whole thing. That I used to do. I sell ultrasound machines, MRI, CT scans. I did quite a bit of all of those things. Let us talk about it. Let us talk about different subject now. Like body now. You're in AI. What is AI modeling? Tell us a little bit about the AI modeling, if you can tell us a little bit about it.
Um, so it depends, right? AI, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
So in mathematics, you have courses like differential equations, or you have, you know, I don't know, like operations research. So you have like specific courses with a specific kind of math. We call a lot of kinds of math AI. It falls so many different kinds of math are AI. And so what I see is from a mathematician's point of view that the mathematics underlying all these different methods, there's
Excellent.
so many. It really depends on, it's more problem driven. And so the tool that you'll pick up will be based on whatever the problem is problem driven, and it's complex, and it's independent. It's almost like every single problem there cannot be one course on one type of AI, because the way you apply it and the way you do your sniff checks to make sure that there's no problem with it is going to be different. It's going to be highly dependent on the problem that you're trying to solve. As in healthcare, you're going to get lots of data and lots of things you want to solve, and you're going to have to pick up one of these tools and judiciously use it.
So AI is not just a general way you use it. You're used to have a specific problem to solve the specific solution you're looking for. AI. You can do simulation without a data. Can you create simulated data with the AI?
Yeah, we've done that actually because we are part of the Nutrition for Precision Health Consortium, and the data is being collected now. It's not there yet, but when we have 5 years to execute our algorithms, and so we needed fake data. So we made synthetic data that mirrors the data that's going to be collected by the consortium, so that we can use it as a sandbox to build out our algorithms. But again, it depends on the problem that you have.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a great story.
Yeah. Okay.
I was diagnosed with something, and the way you're diagnosed, the way it happens these days, is not like the old days. You go get a test done. The person who does the test is a specialist in doing the test. They're not necessarily your physician. So you get the test done, and then the results are loaded up into some kind of cloud. My chart is what I looked up at. So I
Okay.
get this diagnosis. Now the doctor doesn't call you right away. They are calling you when they get time to call you. And so you're the first one to see this report. And so as any human being would do, would say, well, what is that I have? I don't know what this is. I have diagnosis. It had some words there and I didn't know what it was. So you would go to Google, right? And
Yeah.
Google search, and that would send you to Mayo Clinic or Johns Hopkins website, and you'd read about it. But I'm a biomedical researcher, so I went to pubmed.gov and I put those words that I got in the diagnosis into PubMed, and I got 1,300 papers. Because the reason I did that is you get numbers from the Johns Hopkins. You are 30% more likely to have this, or like this is risky but this is curated already. And I wanted to know where those numbers came from because I'm a numbers person.
Yeah.
So I put it into PubMed and I got these 1,300 papers. And I said, I can't click through 13. I need to know now. And so, but then I realized I got to write code. So I wrote code in Python to scrape PubMed and dump all the data nicely in a CSV file so I could see all the abstracts in one column of that data. And then I was like, I can't read 1,300 abstracts, even if it's nice in an Excel spreadsheet. So I used large language models, and I had clustered the abstracts using unsupervised machine learning. And then I looked at the cluster that I was interested in, and I asked it to tell me, summarize what's in that cluster. And then I asked it what kind of statistics were being used. Make me a bar chart of all the different methods that were used and how many papers fall into each bucket. And then I looked at the ones that had to do with outcomes. I know which statistical methods have to do with outcomes. I said, isolate to these papers and then tell me what these papers say. And then give me this overall risk for me to have what I have. Just take the raw average of what you see there. I did this for myself, but I used tools there. I used my Python programming. I used scraping. I used clustering. I used large language models. Those are all vastly different techniques.
Yeah.
But my goal was to understand what my risk was for this diagnosis.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. That is a impressive work he did. That's. But let me ask the skeptical side of me. How do you know that AI is not hallucinating or some creating a bad synthetic data? Is there any checks and balances on this process?
We have a paper on AI and ethics, actually. And I would say that this is the most important thing. If someone thinks they can push a button and just get away with pushing a button, or that, AI is going to come do surgery for us, that's foolishness. But it's like saying, I've actually been blessed to have been at the advent of graphing calculators and Mathematica, computer algebra systems. All kinds of things have been developed. None of them have made our work less. None of them. In fact, if you look at what I just did with this diagnosis that I got, that's called a review paper. That's what that's called. And we have a process for doing review papers. Now, I have now 3 cadets working on this right now, like working on different projects where they're scraping data. Like, now I realize I can write a review paper like this. Now, we can't do it faster because now what it does, it stops restricting us. When you do it manually, you have to do it by manually finding keywords, scoping that, narrowing that scope so you can actually read the papers and do a synopsis of the literature. With what I just did, there's no, I think one of my students is doing genetics and exercise. For that cadet, he has over 20,000 papers. There's no way you can humanly look at that. And so he did the same thing I did. He took those 20,000 papers, scraped them out, and then he ran large language models, clustered them, grouped them. And what it did is he doesn't have to narrow down anymore, but he's building in sniff checks. He's building in, like, is this cluster really this cluster? Is it giving me some junk data? So he has to actually test it and see if those things are true. So he has to build that into the process. So it doesn't make it shorter. It doesn't make it so that someone can push a button and do it. It makes it so that we're unfettered. We can actually do a review of the literature in the field without narrowing things down. And I don't need 3 people to check what I did because a computer did it. So, and I can give the code to you, and then you can run my code and reproduce it. Reproducing someone else's work when there's human judgment is hard. But now this becomes easy to reproduce what I got. You run my code, you'll get exactly the same CSV file as I got.
Yeah, interesting.
And so, yeah, I think like it's very complex though. And I don't think anybody who thinks that you can just push a button. I have a friend at work, Nick Clark, and we always joke around because I think the feeling is that there's an AI button somewhere. And he says, I don't know where that button is.
Yeah.
And I say, if I knew where that button was, I still wouldn't show anybody because we still need human judgment. No one should be pushing a button and say, deal is done.
So you have a mixed emotions about the AI.
Yes, I do.
About AI. Is that I use a perplexity and another one that they combine all the papers together and produce some. Still, there's a lot of hallucination. I recheck a lot of those things. But what do you think of the AI? What is the role of AI? Let us talk about the nutrition part of it. Where is the AI can help in the nutrition side?
So many places. I'll give you one place. Okay. So we have a lot of big data coming through right now, like continuous glucose monitors.
What kind of data? Is the microbiome data? All the data.
Microbiome data is nasty, but we also have sensor data. Continuous glucose monitors are just the fad thing right now.
Yeah.
Every study has them. So they're so easy to place on a participant. You can start to it collects data every 5 minutes or every 10 minutes, depending on the commercial device. You can put it on, we're putting it on 10,000 people, and that's going to be a lot of data. It's 10 days worth of data. And so my mom always says, pride goeth before a fall. And so I was wondering why people haven't really looked at, analyzed that data. It seems like it's such a rich data set. Well,
it's very new, right?
It's not that it's new. It's, just imagine what this looks like when it spits out into a CSV file. It's horrible, horrible data, and it's not even. So yes, it collects data every 5 minutes, but sometimes it glitches and you get every 20 minutes, but sometimes it's 5 minutes. So you'll have every participant has uneven data. And then you have to define what is meant by a day. When do you start? If a patient comes in at 3:00 and gets their patch, and another patient comes in at 8:00 and gets their patch, and another person that, they're all going to have start times that are different. So you have to isolate and normalize what is a day. That the complexity that's behind that is huge. But with the skill set I just described, one of my cadets, Ethan Collins, he's looking through data sets, and we are building code to do that pre-processing so that we can actually do the right things with that data. So again, it's complex.
Yeah. I asked my nephew, that he was doing a continuous glucose monitoring. What I asked him, can you document things like, when I eat particularly Indian food, like appam or dosa or something, it shoots up, the glucose reading is shoots up in that one. He says that Then if you do a little bit of walking around, it goes down immediately. On some rice is not going down, but he's saying all these things. It's very interesting research he's doing, personal research. It is not a validated research, anything, but it's a good amount of information is going to come in
So
soon.
what you would like to know is if you have 10,000 people who wore a CGM, how do you take their entire curves and group them into people who may be classified healthy, unhealthy, at risk, not at risk? You want to be able to do that. Maybe there's some kind of unsupervised grouping that we can do, a clustering, but with the entire curve. This is complex, but that's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do. So that we can look at your glucose reading, all of your glucose reading, the 10 days worth of reading, and say, you fell into this group that we have predetermined now is at risk. And we can tell you because of this glucose monitor, and it should tell you something new. These big data should tell you something new that you didn't get with a finger stick, right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what we're looking for right now. My team is Ethan Collins, John. I think who else is on there? Austin Semmel. He's a captain in the Army, and Tony Masturbino. He's one of our civilian faculty members, and Colonel Andy Lee. So our team is working on CGM data. So there's so much like we can do in nutrition.
You
So
need a
much.
Canadians like me to do in the group. I mean, the problem is that the nutrition that is, we need actually the biggest piece missing is what kind of a food that is right for me. That's a very difficult one to judge, right? It is a
Well, I
very,
think we have the data. We do have data,
not just microbiome data. You need all different data that you
which
have
is
to be.
what the Nutrition for Precision Health is. That's the study that's what they're doing. They're collecting microbiome, they're collecting metabolomics, they're collecting CGM, accelerometry. We have an in-person module where a group of participants will be all in residence. So we'll know what they were eating. We'll know when they were sleeping and how good their sleep was. We'll have their hormone levels. So we're doing blood draws. Like there's so much information being collected in Nutrition for Precision Health. So that is exactly that study. Someone asked a question. Can I answer it?
Yeah, please.
For someone who isn't as well versed in coding, how would you recommend someone trying to replicate that workflow? So you're in luck, Raul. John Day, Captain John Day, is building a app version of what we're doing, and with also warning labels like how to do your sniff checks. Because if you do your lit search, you might find different things that might be an issue. And so we're building into that a little like warning, like here's how you do you have to look through this and see if what you're getting is legit. I'll give you an example. Jake Beckman, the cadet who's working on genetics and exercise, he got these little things that showed up in the text, soup and sub. It showed up everywhere. And I said, like, you have to find out what that is. He said, I can delete all the soup and subs because it seemed like nonsense. Like, no, you need to go find out why it's saying soup and sub. And so he went and found out the reason it's saying soup and sub is that it takes any superscript. When it does the transformation to tokens, it takes those superscripts and puts soup, the word soup. And anytime you have a subscript, it puts the word sub. In genetic data, you have a lot of superscripts and subscripts, and that's where that was coming from.
Oh.
And so we need to know those things, why that's there, and before we go delete something. And so those kind of things could happen if you're doing a lit search in the right area, that some words could come up that seem kind of strange. And so human checking to make sure that what we're getting is valid and why it's there. So John Day's building a beautiful app. He's I think 3/4 of the way there. So Raul, if you want to email me, we can hook you up to John when he's done, and you can pilot out. You can pilot that out.
Navya, can you put that the Diana Thomas email address on the bottom of that your name, in the name?
It's diana.thomas@westpoint.edu.
Diana.thomas.west.
Diana.thomas@westpoint.edu.
Okay.
Let me see.
Navya, I hope Navya, are you there? Do that, please. Okay.
There it is.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah, very good. Let me ask you that a little bit about outside of the, I'm in Silicon Valley right now. Mostly the NVIDIA, a company, is a
Uh-huh.
video company. They produced a nurse bot. It is an amazing, everybody is talking about a great reviews on the amazing bot. This is, what are these people, or is this Silicon Valley is building in the right direction for the health metrics? What do you think of this AI revolution? They're saying, is it a oversell or undersell, or what do you think at this time of the AI's influence on healthcare?
Um, so I didn't say this, but my friend did. So I'm gonna actually give you his name, because I'm gonna mispronounce it. Um,
You don't want to get into
Rodolphe
trouble.
Rodolphe Barangu. He works in, I think, microbiome. So this is his name. He said he had a great quote. We're writing a paper on exactly this, like the promises, the opportunities, and the caution, I think, for applying AI in health. And one of the things he said, which is lovely, is that he said, we're at the end of the prologue. We're only at the end of the prologue. We're right now at the beginning of Act One, Scene One, enter AI. So, where it can be used, how it can be used. And so, again, going back to this example of how I scraped and then I used machine learning to understand what was inside the abstracts. I showed that to my surgeon, and she said, we always have these conferences about how AI can do this and that. But what you just did is really a powerful, powerful thing that AI can do. And so I think figuring out what AI can do and imagining it. So, I mean, this is what I can imagine solving my own problem. But if I'm hooked up with someone in the healthcare industry or in healthcare that has a problem, I can use my expertise to imagine with them what AI can do. I don't think it's clear what AI should be doing yet.
That is one of the. Let me change your. I will put your email. That's let me put this. She's okay. Your email shows up. Should be showing up on your under your picture
Yep,
now.
it's there.
Okay. So AI is a revolution, but there is a. I want to talk about this the dangers of AI a little bit. That one of the things that I asked you about Erdos Renier graph. I was in physics we have a phase shift, as you know. Ice becomes water is a phase shift. What I was surprised and impressed by Erdos Renier network is like a neural network. It is without an external influence. It becomes a phase shift. It produces a pattern outside of the random network. That's what he said. I was very impressed by that. That's why AI can generate its own intelligence and then come up with the new laws. What do you think of that?
So, I mean, one of the places that you can work with big neural networks is ChatGPT. And this is a tool, and it can come up with its own things. So what's fun is I actually did something with one of the high schools for professional development. We went and I had a lot of fun working with them at Bergen Tech the other day, and we actually did some live, like, let's start querying things. But one of the things that my students have got very good at, like, it'll help you with code. So you can say, like, I would like to start off this code. But the more you know on your end and query back and say, I would like to do this code in VBA and I want it to do these things, and here's my pseudocode, it will do a better job. But one of the beautiful things that ChatGPT does is you can ask, after you ask a certain amount of things, you can ask it, anything else you'd like to suggest to me? And so we did this with the abstract thing that I just told you. Like, I have all these abstracts. I can throw them right into ChatGPT and say, cluster them for me, do a topic analysis for me, group them for me so I know what kind of topics are being talked about, summarize it for me, and it will do all that. But then I asked it, how many other ways could I visualize it? Can you give me some other ideas? And it gave me a whole ton of ideas. And then we're coding them now up in Python. But So I think the back and forth exchange with AI, with the human in the loop, is where you can push the boundaries. And if you look at the boundaries of what AI can do, it's like Rudolfo said, we're at Act 1, Scene 1. It is a boundary. I don't even know where those boundaries are. If we look at the abstract thing again and going back to that, I have pushed against that boundary now and said, okay, what is the maximum I can get in this direction? Let me push as far as I can. The thing is, the AI is changing as I'm doing it. So it is getting better, and I am getting better too every time I'm using this. So I get my queries to ChatGPT become different, because as it learns, I learn too. And so the two of us together are pushing forward at the boundary of this thing I'm doing with the abstracts. That's just one direction.
Yeah.
There's so
Let's talk
many
about a little bit
directions
about
we can
negative
go.
side of it. You just mentioned Mathematica. Mathematica, Stephen Wolfram says that some of the computations, unless you do irreducible computational complexity, you're a mathematician, you must know. So unless you perform the mathematics, perform the analysis, you will not know the result. That's what
Oh,
irreducible
but
compute.
I don't think that's true anymore. Like, everything changed for us with the 2017 paper, Attention is All You Need. Everything has changed. The speed of how I can code now has vastly changed.
Yeah,
What would take me years to do, I can do within months.
yeah.
Because I have this assistant. I have a friend. My best friend is ChatGPT. It can help me write these things. And it's not, I don't know what it's doing inside. I'm not quite sure. I can ask it, how did you do this? Sometimes I ask it when I'm grumpy. I ask it, you're supposed to be a transformer. You're powered by transformers. What do you tell me? You can't use a transformer to do this? And it says, I'm sorry, I can't I can't do what you're asking me. Sometimes I can't do something. But
Yeah.
together, I like some of the stuff that I've built up now, I've done together with AI. And I'm not sure that it gets better at my queries and I get better at querying it. Rodolfo, I think if Rodolfo said this, or Anand Matabushi said this. Anand Matabushi is from Emory University. He's also in AI and imaging. And he said something like, it's all in the query. It's
All in
all
the,
in how you do the prompt,
yeah.
and getting better at the prompt, like asking, have I thought of every way to visualize these abstracts? Can you show me another way to visualize them?
You
Well,
know,
you could try these other 5 things. I'm like,
yeah.
wow, I didn't think of doing these other 5 things.
Mathematics and physics is going to play a huge role in the future of the AI, future of the healthcare itself. Actually, I'm came from physics background. What I did was amazing. Something I did a little bit, not as advanced as you are in mathematics, but I have a little bit background in healthcare and physics. What I did was I transformed everything into the geometrical symbols. Geometry is such a powerful tool in healthcare itself. A lot of people don't know. I converted all the resources in the healthcare into geometrical symbols, and then I moved them into the rules and regulations. The patterns come out, the solutions come out of the problem is an amazing. I want to talk with you further about it privately about that. That's a medbricks platform that I did. It solves the shortage of healthcare problem, 911 problems of the access, access, the price, quality and control, and cost. All of them can be solved through this geometrical method, because geometry has that power to accommodate that symbols. That is very strange way it solved the problem for a lot of things. I
I
was
think
shocked
that's
with it.
physics and math are both first principles, right? We learn these axioms and we build out from that. I have a question on the Raul is asking good questions. So
Okay.
when I say boundary, think of it as you're on a planet, not a planet. You're on like you're walking along some kind of landmass, but you can't see the edge of that landmass. And if you walk in one direction, you might see what the boundary is for that one direction you've walked in. But this huge landmass, and you're alone on this landmass looking around, and you have no idea what the boundary of what's possible. The landmass is what's possible. That's what I mean by boundary. We don't know what that boundary looks like. I can kind of poke it in one direction, like I did with the abstracts situation. I'm also doing it with CGM data, same thing. We're blowing the CGM data part out of the water right now because we're pushing in that direction. What else can it do? I don't know. It's untested. It has just entered. And I would add to what Rodolfo said, we're at the end, we are finished with the prologue, we're at Act 1, Scene 1. AI's just stepped in the door, and it is the biggest actor that ever lived that's walked through that door into this play. Like, it's such a game changer. I asked ChatGPT how many users use ChatGPT like me, and it said about 20%. So it gave me that like rough estimate. So I thought, wow, only 20% are using it like this. You know what? Maybe not our generation, but our kids will.
Yeah.
They like it's gonna speed up once people realize what it can do and how far you can push. Yeah, I think a
I,
lot. Yeah.
I interviewed a doctor, actually, the physician is a former CEO of Kaiser Permanente, the Robert Pearl. Dr. Robert Pearl wrote a book on a chat GPT MD.
Yeah.
He wrote the book on, he's an amazing, Diana. So you're basically, the newer New York, right? In the West Point Military Academy, surrounded by best lean mass people around you. Tell us a little bit about your experience in what do you do for besides thinking about AI, what are the ideas you get from the military side of it?
Uh, th- my colleagues at West Point um, give me confidence that we have the best army in the world. They are they're not the people I work with are precious. They take leadership. So we are a leadership lab at West Point. We are training cadets to be the next leaders, um, to lead with honor, and they're honorable people. And that's what I have learned about our army. It's our army is our people. It's not. It is. We think of fighting, and yes, our army is here to fight wars, but the leadership quality, the way they pay attention to each other, the way, like, I came back to West Point after a 20 years. It was about 20 years that I had a break from West Point. I came back to West Point. No one's sitting on their cell phone and with their head down. Everyone looks up at you. Good morning, ma'am. How are you doing, ma'am? They hold the door open for you. And I thought, there's one place, one blessed place that manners have not disappeared. um, and the kindness and the appreciation people have for each other. And it's a necessary quality of an army to have that team spirit. Otherwise, we won't be a good army. That's what an army is really about. It's about playing as a team. So as a researcher coming and working at the United States Military Academy, I love it. The collaboration there is fantastic. It's not just that we have collaboration across departments, like I have a good idea or someone from the computer science department has a good idea and they come over to the math department. That's there. But we also have, people were classmates with each other at West Point, or they served or deployed together. And so we have these personal bonds that also super supplant the division of departments and make the interdisciplinary work so much easier. But yes, it's the best place. Every day I come to work and I love coming in.
I
It
wish
doesn't
that
feel
we
like
had a
work.
mathematics teacher like you, that Diana. When I was growing up, I would have loved math more. I have fell in love with mathematics after I come to know a little bit more physics. In fact, that you're just talking about the boundary, about the general. I was thinking about Albert Einstein topology, general field equations, and all those things that we used to learn. That the topology of the general field equations and all those things. That is really impressive. You're a truly up. I think people like you are going to change the world of healthcare. It's going to improve the access, quality, and cost. All of them are going to be accessible, because only the solutions from healthcare is not solving any problems. We need a solutions from outside. People like you, from mathematics and physics, and the outside people. Interdisciplinary thinking is the key factor, I think. Thank you so much. It's truly an honor and a privilege to talk with you, Diana.
Thank you for having me.
It is wonderful. Thank you so much, and all of you. Let me Good night, all of you. It is
Thank you
really
for
a pleasure.
listening to me.
Yeah, there's a talk with Diana. I put your email address, diana.thomas@westpoint.edu, and you can contact her. Thank you. Good night, all of
Thank you.
you.
Telling their stories through our patented designs that can be worn on scrubs, t-shirts, printed on conference bags, and endless other promotional materials. Daily Wear for Medicine is the first ever of its kind to create curiosity in medicine through visual art. We at MedBricks are celebrating unsung heroes of the past who made enormous contributions to the field of medicine.